everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into AI, more specifically, AI that's designed to feel a little more human, like all those friendly chatbots and virtual assistants out there. Have you ever wondered if, their personality or how they act impacts whether you trust them or not?
That's a really great question, and it's a very, very interesting area of research. We're
Yeah.
going to be looking at a study today
Oh, good. Oh, cool.
that looked at how different AI explain themselves, especially when they are made to seem either more like a human or more like a machine, and how that can really influence our trust and whether we accept what they're telling us.
Okay, so give me a little scenario here. What kind of research are we talking about specifically?
So this particular study that we're looking at today is titled The Effects of Anthropomorphism and Explanation Types on User Perception and Acceptance, Implications for Explainable AI.
Okay.
Basically, they wanted to figure out how people react to different ways that AI can explain itself. And, whether we react differently, if it seems like it's more human-like or more machine-like.
Right. So it's not just what the AI is saying, but how it's saying it.
Exactly.
And if it feels like a robot or if it feels like a friend.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
So imagine you're getting a diagnosis from an AI doctor.
Okay.
Would you trust it more if it sounded like it was reading straight from a textbook
Oh.
versus saying something like, hey, 9 out of 10 doctors would agree with this. I'm here to help.
Oh, that's really interesting. So the same information can be very different depending on how it's delivered.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell me about the different types of explanations that AI can use. What were the researchers looking at?
Well, they tested 4 different types of explanations. They called them consensual, expert, internal, and empirical explanations.
Okay, break those down for me one by one. What are those?
All right, so let's stick with this AI doctor example.
Okay.
A consensual explanation might sound something like, based on your symptoms and what we see in 95% of similar cases, it looks like you might have type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, don't worry, everyone's doing it.
Yeah, like a bandwagon effect. Okay, I got it. So what about expert explanations?
So an expert explanation would sound a little more like this. The AI might say, according to the latest research from top diabetes specialists, and taking into account your specific symptoms, it's likely that you have type 2 diabetes. So it's using the authority of experts to back up its claims.
Almost like a second opinion.
Exactly.
From a specialist, but from a robot.
Got it. Okay, so what about internal explanations? What's that?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
With an internal explanation, the AI actually walks you through its thought process.
Oh, wow.
So it might say something like, you mentioned feeling really tired and thirsty. You've also been losing weight, even though you're eating more.
Yeah.
Putting all of these clues together points to a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes.
So
it's being transparent about how it got to that conclusion.
Yeah, it's like showing its work.
Okay.
Okay, I get it. And that makes a lot of sense. So what's that last one? Empirical.
Empirical explanations are all about the data.
So the AI might say, after analyzing data from thousands of similar cases, the data strongly suggests that you have type 2 diabetes. It's leaning very, very heavily on the evidence.
So all 4 of these explanations, it seems like they kind of appeal to a different way of thinking. Some people might find the expert opinion to be the most convincing, while other people are like, just show me the numbers.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the researchers were super curious about whether our preference for one style over the other might be impacted by how human-like the AI seems.
Okay, so it's not just the information itself, but how it's packaged and who or what is delivering that information. So tell me about the human-like versus machine-like AIs. What did that look like in the study?
So they designed 2 very distinct AI personalities.
Okay.
One was designed to be much more human-like, using friendly language.
Yeah.
Maybe even an emoji here or there.
Yeah.
Think of a virtual doctor that expresses concern, offers you support.
Okay.
The other one was way more machine-like, stuck to a neutral tone. Just the facts.
Just the facts, ma'am.
You got it.
Okay, so you have very different vibes from these 2. So they tested all 4 types of explanations with both of these.
They did. They wanted to see if certain combinations were more effective at building trust and getting people to accept the diagnosis.
So picture this. One group gets a diagnosis from this super friendly AI that says, hey, based on what 9 out of 10 doctors would say it looks like.
Yeah.
And another group gets the same diagnosis from a robot that's just citing statistics.
Exactly. And, that actually taps into a theory called social response theory, or SRT.
SRT, tell me about that.
Basically, SRT suggests that we naturally react to computers as if they're social beings.
Really?
Especially when they show human-like qualities.
Huh.
Even though, like, logically we know they're machines, we still tend to respond to them in this social way.
So, like, I might get attached to my virtual assistant that uses a nice, friendly voice, or I might get annoyed if a chatbot sounds super robotic.
You got it. We're wired for that social interaction. And that extends even to how we talk to machines. And this social dynamic can really affect how we see that AI. Like, do we believe it? Do we trust what it's saying?
Okay, that makes total sense. So the researchers are thinking that this whole social element might influence how people respond to the different AI explanations. What exactly were they testing, though? What were they looking for?
They were measuring three main things: perceived trust, perceived persuasiveness, and overall acceptance of the AI.
Okay, so did people believe the AI? Were they convinced by its explanations? And were they okay with the idea of using this AI in like a real world setting?
Yeah, exactly. And they had some pretty specific hypotheses about how these three things might be influenced by the personality of the AI, like human versus machine. And the type of explanation it used, they thought that this human-like AI would be like way more persuasive if it used those consensual and expert explanations, just like we tend to trust recommendations that come from our friends or, experts that we know.
Yeah, makes sense. You trust people you think are similar to or who seem like they know what they're talking about. But what about the machine like AI? What did they think would be most effective there?
Well, their hypothesis was that the machine-like AI would actually be much better at building trust through those internal and empirical explanations.
So you're saying that people would trust the robot more if it like showed its work, just
Uh,
laid out all the facts and figures.
yeah, you got it. It plays into our expectations of machines being like super logical and data-driven.
Right. Okay. So how did they test all this? Did they actually build like a whole virtual AI doctor for people to talk to?
Not exactly. They kind of simplified things a little bit.
Okay.
So each participant was shown this hypothetical situation. Like imagine you're experiencing, some common symptoms, like you're super thirsty, you're peeing a lot, just basic stuff.
Okay, I've been there. Late night Googling symptoms.
Exactly. So in this scenario, the participant is then diagnosed with type 2 diabetes by either the human-like or the machine-like AI. And remember, the AI delivers this diagnosis using one of those four explanation styles that we talked about.
Right. So one person might see a friendly AI that's like, hey, most people with these symptoms have diabetes. And another person might see a robot that cites a bunch of statistics to back up the
Yeah,
diagnosis.
exactly. And after getting their diagnosis, each participant was asked to rate how much they trusted the AI, how persuasive they thought the explanation was, and whether or not they actually consider using an AI doctor like this in real life.
So what did they find? Did it all line up with what they expected about like human-like versus machine-like?
This is where it gets super interesting.
Okay.
Their findings actually showed some pretty unexpected things.
Oh, a plot twist.
Well, the study did confirm that like different explanation styles definitely impact how we see AI. The results weren't always as clear-cut as they initially thought.
I love it when science surprises us.
Yeah.
So what surprised them?
Well, for example, they predicted that those consensual and expert explanations would work best for the human-like AI. But it turns out that those internal explanations, where the AI explains its reasoning like step by step, those were actually the best at building trust. And that was true no matter if the AI seemed human-like or machine-like.
So even if the AI was super friendly and relatable, people still wanted to know like how it was making decisions.
Exactly. Transparency was key.
Yeah,
People want to know why. Why is the AI saying this?
makes sense. Like I'm willing to trust the AI, but I want to know that there's like a thought process behind it, not just like a random guess or because that's what everyone else thinks. What else did they find?
Well, when it came to being persuasive, the machine-like AI actually did better than the human-like one, no
Real.
matter what explanation style it was using.
So you're telling me the robot was more convincing than the friendly AI?
Yeah.
That's super weird.
It might seem a little counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but it makes sense when you think about it. When you're dealing with something as serious as like a medical diagnosis,
Yeah.
we might actually be more likely to believe the AI that seems really objective, that doesn't have those biases, even if it's not as warm and fuzzy.
Right. So it's like I want my doctor to just give it to me straight. Even if it's not all sugar-coated, it's about authority and credibility.
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, the machine-like AI may have just seemed more authoritative just because it presented itself as being like totally data-driven and logical.
So it's not just about like being human-like, it's about picking the right AI for the right job, I guess.
That's a huge takeaway from this research. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to building AI.
This is making me think a lot. What about overall acceptance? Did people say they would actually use one of these AIs as their doctor?
The study actually found that there's a strong connection between trust and persuasiveness and acceptance.
Oh.
The more people trusted the AI and found its explanations convincing, the more likely they were to say, yeah, I would use this AI.
So it seems like trust and persuasion are the real keys to getting people to accept and use AI. Did they find any difference in acceptance levels between like the human-like and the machine-like AIs?
That's where things get a little more complicated.
Okay.
While both types showed potential for acceptance, there were some subtle differences.
Mm.
It seemed to depend on, individual preferences
Uh-huh.
and the specific explanation style that was used.
Right. So maybe some people like a friendly, supportive AI, while others are like, just give me the cold hard facts, robot.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
really highlights how important it is to understand your audience and make sure
Yeah.
you're designing the AI and how it talks to fit their needs and expectations.
So we've gone pretty deep into the weeds here, but what does all this mean for like the average person who interacts with AI every day?
That's a great question.
It is. But luckily, we have you here. What are the big takeaways for our listeners? Okay, so we've learned a lot. How AI explains things makes a big difference. People trust it more when it shows its work. And sometimes a robot giving you the hard facts can be surprisingly convincing. It's about using the right AI for the job.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. The important thing to remember is that we can't just blindly trust any AI you know.
Mm.
We have to be informed, like think critically about how the AI is designed and how it's communicating with us.
So you mean we can't just assume that an AI is trustworthy or that its explanations are always accurate? We got to be a little skeptical.
Definitely. A little healthy skepticism is always good. This research actually gives us some tools to evaluate AI. It shows how important transparency is, understanding how the AI gets to its conclusions.
Makes me think about like the future of AI. Are we heading towards a world where everything is run by robots? Our doctors, our cars, even like social media?
I wouldn't say it's about control. It's more about collaboration, I think. AI has so much potential to improve our lives, but it has to be developed responsibly with human values in mind.
I like that. Collaboration, not control. So how do we make sure that happens? Like what can we do as everyday users?
Well, it starts with being aware. Think about all the AIs you interact with daily. Are they human-like or machine-like? What would make you trust them more? What kind of explanation would you need? What questions would you ask?
Wow. Yeah, you're right. I'm thinking about like my virtual assistant and how it gives me recommendations. Usually it's just like, because you liked this other thing, not very convincing.
Exactly. That's a great example. We should demand more from the AIs we use. We got to ask questions, challenge their assumptions, and make our expectations clear.
So it's kind of like being a smart shopper. Do your research before you buy something, right? We should do the same with AI.
Absolutely. And as AI gets even more advanced, this is going to be even more important.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive. We've talked about how AI can seem human-like, how different explanation styles work, and what it all means for whether we trust and accept AI. We've even talked about the future.
Yeah, and I think the main takeaway is that we all have a role to play in shaping how AI is developed and how it's used in our lives. We need to be informed, engaged,
Yeah.
and willing to ask tough questions. We have to demand transparency and accountability from the AI that's out there.
I love that. Couldn't have said it better myself. So, to our listeners, I want to leave you this. The next time you're using AI, take a second to think about how it's designed, how it communicates with you, the kind of explanations it gives you. Is it earning your trust? Is it convincing? And most importantly, are you okay with the role it plays in your life?
Those are great questions to think about. Because the future of AI isn't just about better technology. It's about how we choose to use those tools and how we shape how AI is used.
Amazing. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep asking those tough questions.